I want to talk about the start of your career. Like in early career, you worked in Europe.
Yeah.
And you even like spent time with Martin Scorsese and...
yeah, that was a bit of an exaggeration, really. When I was living in Milano, Marty came over to do a vanity film for Giorgio Armani. And Armani was producing it, putting up the money, did the whole thing. It was showing him in his showroom and with his models in his house and all that stuff. So Marty was hired to direct it, was given, a lot of money and as much wardrobe as he wanted from Armani's store. He and Barbara Defina, his wife at the time. And Néstor Almendros was hired as a cinematographer. So I got hired as the local Steadicam operator because that's what I did at the time. I was operating Steadicam. So I did that one job with Marty and Néstor, but it wasn't like I was working with them full time. It was a great experience, and Néstor was a sweetheart and a wonderful cinematographer, but it's not like I worked with Marty Scorsese. In fact, I just last summer did one job, one day on a concert. It was a memorial concert for Robbie Robertson from the band that Marty was the co-director on. And I was one of the camera operators on that. So it was kind of like a full circle, back and operate again.
Did he
He wasn't there. No, he was there by Zoom.
Okay.
Talking about, on Zoom.
Yeah.
The co-director was there and he ran it. And Janusz was the DP. And there were like 10 of us operating, all different, DPs operating.
Nice.
It was fun.
Since you were basically starting out in Europe and specifically in Italy.
Yeah.
I know that the way they do films in Italy is very different from here. How did it influence you? And how, what's the biggest difference you think, in terms of filming here and filming in Italy?
Yeah, basically, it's basically the European thing. It's the director. It's the auteur theory. The director runs it and the producer kind of just doesn't say much about what's going on the screen, which occasionally happens here, but not that often. I guess maybe just because I started in that, it didn't really feel weird to me. But I did notice the first movie that I was on, I was working as an extra. I wasn't hired to be in the movie. To be on the movie, I was just as an extra. It was Once Upon a Time in America. And I was able to watch for 10 days Tonino Delli Colli, who was the DP, work and how he did it. And it was very different from how I'd seen American movies being made. He used a lot of small redheads bounce in this stage. Not stage, it was a big set. Just all placed all over the place. Little bounce lights to light the characters and the action and the areas. And I'd never seen those little lights used before because I did work in New York before I moved to Italy in a commercial house that did toy commercials. And they had classic Mole Richardson lights. It was tweenies, some Inkies and tweenies, but they were used for highlights in places. It was mostly babies, juniors, seniors, those kind of big lights that you used with diffusion in front of them or not, but never these little bounce lights everywhere in the room. So that was a instructional thing that I saw. And then when I started shooting it was just low budget. The first movie was no money. It was one of those where they get money from the government to put into a production, and my friend, she just decided that was all the money she was going to use. So we had, I think it was the exchange rate was about $25,000 or $30,000 to do the whole feature.
Okay.
And we shot on Super 16. Actually, it was regular 16, I believe, was the first Aton that Cinecittà had. And that was, by the seat of your pants. Just you run around and you shoot, and the director, she was also the lead actress and the writer. So you kind of just did, she was the motivating everything. So you just made it work for that, and you go by your instincts. And it's one of the things I learned is listen to your gut.
This is awesome.
The gut instinct is every time I get I second guess myself and I go, oh no, it's wrong. I should always listen to the gut instinct because it's always the right thing.
Yeah.
The second movie I did had some money.
Is it also in Italy?
Also in Italy. This was the first one was in Rome. The next one was in Milano and Bergamo. And it was the producer I had met at Cannes, the festival. I think it was at Cannes. No, it was a small film festival in Italy that I don't think exists anymore. And he was trying to get Jim Jarmusch he was trying to produce Jarmusch's first film, Stranger Than Paradise. And I met him there. We hit it off, and he was living in Milano, and I was living there, and I needed a place to stay. And one thing led to another, and he let me stay in his apartment with his family. He was a wealthy guy. And he produced this film. I did a short film for him first with this director from Bergamo. And we hit it off, and then they asked me to do this feature. So I think it was probably, I'm going to guess it was about a $300,000 film. It was a legitimate movie, but it was pretty low budget, or whatever 300,000 at the time was. Shot on 35 Fuji stock. It was a really good experience. It was really also just feeling it, learning it, and the director was everything. The producer just every now and then came by and said, maybe, the datas look great or something like that. And then the third movie I did there was black and white 35 millimeter, which was again a $25,000 or $30,000 film. The producer didn't care. He got the money from the government, took his cut, and gave the rest of the production. And then he went off on a holiday on a boat for the rest of it, for a year or whatever. And that was great because I got to shoot black and white Agfa Pan 100 stock. It was phenomenal, or 250. Beautiful, beautiful stock. Much more fine grained than the Kodak stocks were. It was just, learn it. Because I had shot black and white stills, but I hadn't shot any black and white film before that, except for maybe a couple of rolls of black and white Super 8, some Russian Orvo stock, I think it was, East German.
And is that like the black and white has more dynamic range than the
It did.
color? Yeah.
At the time, it definitely did, especially the Pan Agfa Pan did.
And it's more like low light in terms of like you can.
No, it was a 100 or 250 stock. It wasn't super fast. Kodak had the fastest, was their 4X, I think at the time, and that was 500 or 400. But it turned to be kind of grainy.
I'm asking because like I'm honest to myself. I'm a new generation. I'm a digital. I tried to do in film, but I didn't really enjoy it because the process is like very a little bit complex to me. But I asked like about if the black and white is more sensitive because like right now digital cameras, when it's monochromatic, they like can go crazy at low light.
Yeah, I actually have two red monochromes, and their base ASA is 2000, I think. Because they have there's no bare pattern. All the photo sites are full. They receive the full color, everything. So you get much more sensitivity because of that.
So the monochromatic sensor you said, is it like it doesn't have IR cut filter?
It does. I believe there's an IR filter in the red cameras. You can pull it out. But it's the same sensor as the color ones. Just there's no bare pattern there.
Like Craig Fraser, they showed this sequence with the monochromatic. I was wondering if you could actually do a similar thing with this one. But he pulled out the IR.
Yeah, you pull out the IR. Yeah, there's one camera, had it for a while. I think it was a Panasonic Varicam, had where it was actually user removable on set. Anytime you want, you can just pull the IR filter out. So you could do infrared photography with, right.
That's kind of
right there.
Yeah,
it was cool. That camera, unfortunately, that camera was a fantastic camera, but it went away because Panasonic didn't really have
another use. I remember like when Hoyte shot Nope, the horror film.
Oh yeah.
So they did Day for Night.
Yeah.
But in a crazy way, where they shoot Alexa, they shoot IMAX, and they do basically the stereoscopic mirror from below.
Yeah.
With Alexa 65 to match exactly the frame that it was doing without IR filter. And the reason for it is because when you do like Day for Night, basically the biggest giveaway is like the lights or the sky.
Yeah.
Okay, they didn't have any lights because it was in the desert, but they had the sky.
Right.
And with the shooting with this camera, they had a perfect key because the sky turns to black, and they had a perfect key to actually make it up. It's crazy, but it looks.
There's another way to do it now that I've seen that Bob Richardson and Rob Legato did on Emancipation, film with Will Smith.
Okay.
They wanted to be monochromatic. They tinted it a little bit in the end in post, but it was supposed to be basically black and white. Well, they shot with a color. They looked at shooting monochrome, and then Bob did some tests, and they shot with I think an Alexa. I don't remember what it was. It was a straight one or an LF or a 65. But he explained that because if you shoot in color, you have the three color channels, like in film, you have the RG and the B. You can separate the blue channel then. In black and white, you can't. Shooting in color, you can separate the blue channel and crush the blue so the blue sky goes black. So they were able to control it a lot more. So they did a lot of day for night because
I like that.
And they did that because of it's kind of a smart way to.
It is, yeah. Because you never have to actually, you kind of get in.
You give a separation. There's automatic separation there. The blue channel becomes your separate pass. You're separate, and it's automatic. It's registered because it's the same lens, the same thing.
I gotta do research on it because
try it.
I want to make a film where it's gonna be mostly night in the desert. It's about crossing the border, and it's like basically everything should be like a moonlight.
Yeah.
But I know that I'm not gonna be able. It has to be day for night.
Right.
So I'm looking for like ways how I'm actually gonna do.
You should try it. It should be pretty easy. I mean, you have Resolve.
Yeah.
Just shoot something and try and just separate.
Does it have to be like in RAW? So to take it apart, or it's
that I don't know.
Yeah, probably because before it gets debate, yeah.
There's an interview on YouTube, I think, that if you look up Emancipation and Bob Richardson and Rob Legato, they describe the whole thing.
Let's talk about your transition to digital, from film to digital. Yeah. How did that work out? Was it like from the start, or you were hesitated?
No, was I hesitating? I shot film obviously all my life because that's all there was. I did shoot one digital film before digital became popular, when it was with a Panasonic, basically a Handycam, but in PAL, because we were going to blow it up to 35 millimeter. Okay. So we shot this film called Everything Put Together as an experimental film. And I said I would do it as long as I could follow the dogma 95 and not have any lights and just use available light. But all the locations and the timing and the project had to be based on natural light, where the light would come in through windows, and how all that was. And they agreed to it. So we shot on that camera, and it was interesting. It was a consumer digital camera. But we did a 35 print from it, and it came out really interesting. It was really great. But after that, it was film again, until I was offered this film called Leaves of Grass. I think that was, Quantum of Solace came first. On Quantum of Solace, which we were shooting 35, I was in touch with Jared from Red, and I'd seen their camera. And I said, I would love to try something, because I did see that you can shoot with a 360-degree shutter. So when cars are driving, the hubcaps, the wheels don't turn backwards. They are always going the right direction. I said, I hate that. You're seeing an action shot and the car wheels are turning backwards. It always distracts me. I said, let me do some tests. So they came over to London while I was prepping the Bond film, and we shot for 4 days, I think, 4 days and nights with a Red 1 at the time, to prove to the Bond people that this could work for certain scenes, not the whole movie. So I shot stuff with cars and the driving the wheels, and then we shot some stuff at night in Piccadilly Circus, which at that time the Red was having the problem where hot headlights would be black, so you had to then fix that in post. But but that was, the tests were successful, but Sony wouldn't let us use the camera because it's a Sony production in the end, and they said you can't have a Red camera on a Sony production. You can't even. They said they kiboshed it completely. You can't even mention it anywhere, and you can't ever see a picture. So Red said, well, we're not going to get involved if we can't be known for this. So time passed, and then I got involved with Tim Blake Nelson to do Leaves of Grass, which was a low-ish budget film we're shooting in Louisiana with him and Ed Norton. And Ed had worked with Fincher on something recently before that. And he said, maybe we should shoot with the Red camera. Maybe we should shoot digital, and then we can keep the camera rolling and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I don't know about these. And look, I'll get Fincher on the phone. So we sat in an office, and Fincher was on the phone, and we're talking. And he goes, yeah, you should try it. It's not perfect, but you should try it. You can learn, do some testing. And it's a great way. And then you can get a 45-minute run, and it's going to, in the end, it'll probably save you money. So I said, you know what? I'll try it. I'll give it a try. So I found a DIT who worked for Red, who's become a dear friend and who's one of the better DITs. Actually, no, he had worked with me on a movie as a camera tech, because he's fixes computers and cameras and everything. And so he came along for the movie and he was my DIT on it. And it was tough. It was a Red 1, first generation. It was interesting. We had some issues here and there in post, just the range wasn't quite as big as I would have hoped it to have been, and sometimes skin tones got a little funky. But it was, a baptism by fire. I had to try it.
Still better than Panasonic PAL camera.
It was better than it was better than the PAL Handycam, definitely. And then I think the next film we went back to film, shooting digital much later. I think the first full-on digital that I did, really dedicated that way, was The Host with Andrew Niccol, which we shot with the Alexa, the original Alexa. It had just come out and said, let's try it, and it was a game changer, completely different. And the interesting thing there was that you could also go back later in post, because we shot I believe we were able to shoot RAW at that time.
Maybe.
I think so. Maybe if it wasn't RAW, at least it was logged. You could go back in post and change your ASA rating or your ISO rating. So, because some people went out and did some second unit stuff for me, and this was out in the desert.
I think you can do, with Alexa, if you have an external recorder, you can actually do RAW. Yeah.
So I don't even know if we had the external recorder for this. I think it was.
I think the first generation had just S by S cards.
The S by S cards, yeah.
Yeah, and the second generation looked almost the same, but they added codecs, and the codecs could actually record the RAW.
So maybe it was that. I don't remember exactly, but what happened was somebody shot some stuff for us, second unit, and it was terribly overexposed. I mean, all the highlights were clipped. Yeah. So we went back in, and I said, what can we do about this? And my DIT it said, let's put it into Resolve, whatever it was. Maybe we're using Baselight at the time. And it said, let's reset the ISO and make it lower. We'll take it down to 50. And it brought it right back. There was nothing clipped, and it all fit in, and we could match the rest of our footage. So that was kind of like one of those things where on film, you develop your negative, and if you've overexposed, if you've blown it, whatever, that's where it is. Yes, in a DI you can bring things.
So you think if it was film, you wouldn't be able to save it?
Those pieces, no. I think those would have been so overexposed that they would never have matched, even into the DI, because there would have been no detail on the negative.
Okay.
And I think from there on, it was almost all digital because nobody wanted to spend the money on film again. And I sort of listened to Roger Deakins when he told me, I don't need to shoot film. The digital, he did the Bond after I did, which was Skyfall, and he shot that on Alexa. And he goes, the Broccoli and Wilson family, they were like, you're going to shoot our Bond film on digital? And Roger proved to them that it was, quality and that he could do it. And they went back to film after that because people wanted to shoot film. But if Roger Deakins tells you, I don't need to shoot film, I can get the same quality, I can get what I want on digital, you kind of believe him because he is, among the masters.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I get it, and I'll try. And I shot a movie on the Panasonic Varicam with the codecs back. So I was shooting RAW because I was shooting a movie in South Africa and Namibia that had to have night scenes that are written. Scene takes place on the beach at night, in the middle of the night, on a moonless night, with black Zodiac boats arriving on shore carrying African people. And I go, okay, black on black on black and no moonlight. What am I going to do? And the Panasonic was at the time the only camera that had a high ISO rating. It was like, there were two ratings. I think it was 800 and 2,500 or 800 and 5,000. No, 5,000. 5,000. And I shot with that, and I put up one small light, and it was brilliant. Just amazing. And I actually pushed it to 10,000 because I had the light for the 10,000, and it was gorgeous. It was a beautiful camera, and then I shot another part. I did a TV pilot with it, but Panasonic didn't push the camera. They didn't advertise it well enough to push it, and so it kind of went away. But I saw that there's so many things you could do with digital, and now, obviously now there's so much more you can do with all the post tools and things that even shooting on film, you shoot on film and you go to a DI, it's not that much different than shooting digital to begin with, because the DI, my first DI was Finding Neverland. And that was, I went, this really changes things. Because before that, it was...
So basically, if you film, you shoot on film,
and then you scan it. Yeah. And you're in a DI, you're basically like shooting, shooting digital, except if something is horribly overexposed or horribly underexposed, it won't be on the negative to bring back. But looking at it there, I'm in the DI suite at Deluxe and going, I can do that. We can do those little variations. And I had Steve Scott was my colorist, who's like brilliant. And he had been a flame artist before that. So he was able to there in the DI suite, put up windows and mats and things and just pick up and accentuate and, make it look more beautiful. And it was fantastic. And I go, this is really an answer, So now shooting digital, you're in that same realm already. I personally think, not everybody agrees, but I personally think you can make with a good digital camera and the right talent, you can make anything on digital look as good as or better than film.
I agree with that because I know there are some people that say that it's not possible to actually do, but from what tests I did, and if you have a great colorist, there are some tools that actually make it really convincing. Yeah. And I like the look of the film, and I think it's that's where everyone going for. Not always, but I like the aesthetics of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't like the workflow of it. I like digital, but at the same time, I always say, even though I know that I'm a new generation, I like digital.
Mm-hmm.
I still like to treat digital as film in terms of how many takes you do. I don't like many
I don't like when they say keep rolling, keep it rolling, keep it rolling.
I like to treat it as it was film. But you shoot it on digital, but at the same time, let's keep it. Yeah.
Well, the worst thing that I find in shooting digital on sets is that the crew loses interest.
It's just digital. You can do another one.
Yeah, and because you just keep it rolling, You don't have to reload every 4 or 10 minutes. The crew gets bored. They sit around. They don't pay attention. And they get noisy. And it's really the biggest problem that I'm seeing with digital is that people don't treat it with the same respect that, film, you're shooting film and you hear them and they go, oh, that's hundreds of dollars going by. We can't fuck it up. Yeah.
Everyone goes quiet. Okay, this is the time you have to do it. I also want to talk about, I saw that you have a different variety of digital cameras throughout the films you do. And I was wondering, because I see there is Alexa, there is Red, there is Venice. I want to hear your thoughts in terms of, are you just experimenting and just trying things? Because not often you see someone actually shooting an Alexa and then go into Red or Venice, something like this. Usually whoever tries Alexa, they just stay with Alexa. But you have different variations there.
Outside influences sometimes. So I started off with as I said, the Panasonic Handycam, right? And then I did with the Red one. And then I went to the Alexa because I did tests and I liked the way the Alexa looked. And then a film came up, or a TV pilot came up, and I was choosing between the Alexa and, if I remember what the other camera was. It was a Red, or it was a Panasonic. No, I think it was a Red camera. So I did tests, and the director said, "Oh, I don't know. I don't trust. You got to prove to me that it's as good. I like the Alexa. I know the Alexa." So okay, so I shot tests, and AB, didn't tell him what was what, and he just looked at me. He chose the Alexa. But okay, we're shooting with the Alexa. I was fine with it. I had no problem with that. The Panasonic, the Varicam was because of the ASA rating that I could shoot it basically at night. As like I also saw the Sony test. I bought an A7S because of that moonlight test on the beach, just shooting at night. And I used it on that movie that I shot with the Panasonic for for night vision stuff, where I wanted to be a little grainy and all that. It depends a lot on the subject, the story, the what the production is. But then there's times where the director says, "Oh, I own these cameras. You have to use them."
Okay.
So I said, "You want the job? You have to use my cameras." I go, "Okay, it's worth it. I know the camera's not going to be terrible. It's I can make it look as good as more or less than the other cameras that I would have used. But sure."
I didn't know it happens on a bigger scale.
It happened on an enormous scale.
Yeah.
The director happened to own some cameras
and
said you have to use them.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even think about it.
No, to me it was like, are you kidding? But yeah. I mean, I've heard it in the past where directors own film cameras or they own lenses or this or that. But usually they'll say, I own these. I'd like it if you use these, but if it doesn't work for you, it's your choice in the end. This was no.
Or like as a backup, you know,
Yeah.
like if you,
Yeah. Yeah, this was use these. You can put in whatever glass you want on it, but you have to use my camera.
Yeah. You know, I think red is underrated. And many people
Now they are, yeah.
Yeah, many people think they don't want to shoot on red. Sometimes I actually hear that a lot. They want to shoot like Venice or Alexa, but they don't want to shoot on red. And I was like, why? Because sometimes it's a better choice.
It has
because
the stigma from the red one.
Because they had so issues back then, and they're thinking that all that is carried on to the new generations. But the new generation is a completely different animal. It's best at any, you know, like stages, you know.
Yeah.
Because even though like I have Alexa 35, I also have Viraptor, and I more often choose Viraptor for many reasons, because of the size, because of the sometimes resolution, sometimes ability to actually change easy cropping ratios and stuff like that. Sometimes like maybe low light, maybe frame rates. There are so many things they did well, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes they just like because of the size, it actually the reason why you take the camera, you know, because you can fit it in places. Yeah.
The Venice. The reason I first used the Venice was when the Rialto first came out, and they had it, or they told me about it. It was a pre-production model they brought from Japan, showed it to me, and I was doing a movie where I knew I had to shoot in very tight spaces, like in caves and against a wall, and I couldn't fit a regular camera in there. I don't think the Alexa Mini was even out by then, but no, the Mini was, but the Mini still became, you know, and then you put anything on it,
it's Mini, but you build it up, it becomes like, I even did a picture like side to side, Mini with the cage on next to a Classic, and they look exactly the same size.
Yeah. So I said, let me try this Rialto thing out. And I said, I have a couple of shots I know I'm going to need to use it, so let me try the camera. And I did some tests with the camera. And the Venice, it looked beautiful, it looked great. I took it out there. First day, we had a shot. I put the Rialto and showed everybody's going, wow, that's really cool. Put it up, did the shot. Every day, I had at least one or two shots that I used the Rialto on. I thought I was going to use it once or twice. It was the most convenient, perfect device to use for so many things where you just don't have the space. And the quality is exactly the same, and it still had the the ND filters, which is another thing about the Venice that I think they did right, where I don't think Alexa or ARRI did right, and they still haven't done it right. The built-in ND filter should start at 3, at 0.3. It should not start at 0.6.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
There's so many times where you have to throw a 0.3 on, so then you're stuck on putting a piece of glass in front anyhow, and when it starts at 0.6 inside, whereas the Venice starting at 0.3, it's all there, and shooting in the desert and in various conditions, the light's changing a lot, or there's wind or whatever, you don't want to get into changing, opening the glass, you just, change in a quarter of a second or whatever, millisecond. It's.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, no, I did a lot on this show called Rattlesnake for Netflix, which is where I used the Venice the first time, and found out we probably saved an hour a day just in changing ND filters. It was really, there's those things to weigh out, that it's not just the physical look, because you have to fit into a production schedule and to other things and environmental things. And there's some points where, okay, I can get the same image out of the Alexa, I can get out of the Venice, or I can get out of the Red. Which one fits the whole production the best? And for that one, it was the Venice, and I fell in love with the Venice. I've used it like 5 times since then.
Are you planning on doing something on the with Ronin 4D?
I would love to.
After all this?
Well, no, actually I did 2 years ago now. At the end of the year, during the writer's strike, we had a waiver, and we shot a small-ish film, like $11 million in Savannah, Georgia, called The Fabulous Four. And we had a scene where it's a speedboat that's towing parasailers. And the parasailers are Bette Midler and Susan Sarandon's on the boat. Bette Midler and Megan Mullally and Sheryl Lee Ralph are supposed to be up in this parasail being towed by Susan Sarandon, who's eaten some gummies so she doesn't get seasick and is like completely out of it and has hallucinations. But we had to shoot all this running stuff with her and the boat pilot and somebody running the boat, and a camera operator, a focus puller, and a sound man on this 15-foot, was it? we're supposed to get the bigger boat, and on the day of the shoot, they delivered the smaller one because the bigger one got rented out for a tourist thing. So had this small thing coming in, or the day before we heard, and I was talking to my camera operator, Jim McConkie, who's a Steadicam operator, worked with him for years, fantastic guy. Said, how are we going to make this work? All this boat stuff, I don't want you handheld because we want to be, boat level. And I've done it before with these, perfect horizon things, but they're big rigs. Said, okay, Steadicam, I don't want you standing up. I don't want you on this moving boat with a Steadicam. And you have to move around. And so I said, how about a Ronin? And we were thinking, well, that's okay, but it's, it gets to be a big thing again on this little boat. My camera assistant, Donnie Steinberg, who I worked with many times in LA, who had moved to Georgia, was there. And he goes, I've got this thing called the 4D. So I saw a demo of it online, this thing they did in China, this whole thing with the car and in and out and on a crane. And I go, you have one of those? He goes, yeah. And I've got Voigtlander lenses made for it, which will match the lenses that I was shooting with. And I said, great, bring it out. And we used that on the boat. And so it was just Jim operating it and Donnie pulling focus. And it was like a quarter of the space that we needed if we had any other deal. So yes, a year and a half ago I used it, and I just would love to have it for something where it fits, where it makes sense. Like Adolescence, like that TV series. It makes sense. I'm not going to use it just to use it. Unless it's a super low budget show that there's no money for and I own it, and then I say, well, okay, we'll use it because that's the only way we can make the show.
Or if you have it like somewhere on the site and then, like you don't have time or running out of time on the schedule, and then you take it just to catch up.
I mean, the biggest limitation with it is the size lens you can put on it. If there's somebody who made for that one, because they use that in England, the show Adolescence, I read, to use bigger lenses. Now, no, they told me over at NAB, because I was talking to the people who designed it and make it. They said somebody now has made a counterweight, so you can use a heavier lens that doesn't stick out the back, but it's it's the arc of the gimbal. It's actually a molded, fits right on it, made out of iron. They have different ones, so it gives more weight to the back, so you can counterweight against the lens. So you can use heavier lenses.
But there are so many choices right now in terms of lenses. There's so many smaller lenses, even like Cook. They showed
that's what they use, the Cook SP3.
They're very small.
But what if you want to use a?
They can't.
What if you want to use an anamorphic? Are there any?
It's funny.
And 2 times anamorphic, not a 1.3 or 1.5.
There is the Blazer, the cheap anamorphics. They're super small. I bought them specifically for this so I can fit them.
Which one, Blazer? Because they have like 3 different.
They like
not the Katos.
No, it's just the Blazer Remus.
The Remus, okay.
Yeah, they have 45, 65, and 100.
But they're 1.5s.
They're 1.5.
Yeah.
But they're pretty crazy.
I mean, I have a prejudice. I like 2.0, and my reasons are, I did a movie with a 1.3 on Super 16, because those are the only thing I could get. The Hawk 1.3s. And they allowed us to get full anamorphic, full 239 frame from a Super 16 negative without having to chop into it, because we wanted, as fine grain as we could get. And it was great. It was on Machine Gun Preacher. They worked great. But you don't get the feel of an anamorphic lens in what I like about anamorphic. And for me, it's nothing to do with blue streaks or any streaks. I like the focus bump and the shape shift. And I liken it to, it's become a cliche for me, but that a focus shift on a spherical lens is like a zoom. Whereas a focus shift on an anamorphic lens, a 2 times anamorphic, is like a dolly move. It's a physical space. You feel that space move. And that's what I really love about anamorphic. It's not to go, oh, I shot anamorphic or blue streaks or, the J.J. Abrams things of putting 700 streaks into every shot. I don't care about the streaks. It's that the visceral, physical space that you feel that a lot of people, maybe the public doesn't even know it. They don't feel it. They don't understand it. But it's something they feel subconsciously. And to me, that's important. That's why I like 2 times.
I also like before, actually, I always loved only 2 times because I thought before, like, there is no meaning in anamorphic if it's not 2 times. Until I actually saw the Mercury, because the Mercury kind of impressed me because they 1.5, but they bend the world. Everything is even stronger than Orion, which is 2 times. And I was like, wow. And
I used the Orion on a TV series. It wasn't my choice. The first DP chose them. They were okay. They didn't have a lot of character.
Yeah, yeah. Where the Mercury ones, they had a lot.
Are they more like the Kawas? Because I did a movie with the Kawas, which are just crazy.
The probably difference. Cars probably will go a little bit crazier, but at the same time, like the Mercuries, they bend the world crazy, and they have a very strong fall of on the sides, on the focus, where the middle is sharp.
Yeah,
and it has almost no chromatic aberrations, and it's very sharp in the middle. But it gives you all these flavors on the side. So I was like, when I saw it first time on the NAB, I was like, wow, I did not expect that to get from 1.5 because it actually does something to the image. And I was like, okay, interesting. But after that, I was like, okay, maybe some. And the Blazer, they super cheap. But they went even crazier than Mercury's. They went like they bend the world so crazy. When you move it, the world warps around.
It fits for the depends on what the story is. I also did a thing with the two different Hawks. The last one I did was the Hawk V-Lights, which classic, beautiful. I really liked the way they looked. They weren't crazy, but they just gave enough of the feel. But they were 2 times. But I also did a low-budget movie with the Hawk C series, if you're familiar with those. They're basically Lomo glass that they remounted in Hawk things. And they're crazy because the whole barrel turns and changes size as you're focusing. So you can't put a matte box on it because the matte box turns with the barrel. Okay. So we had to move this whole rig with it. But they're very, very atmospheric. They gave a lot of character to the image. They were interesting, like the Lomos.
Hey, I want to talk about also, you like to operate camera.
Yeah.
Because it's close to me because I like to operate camera. I don't know. I also like, probably because of that, I like single camera approach as well. Yeah. And I know that you like this. I want to talk about like your approach and how do you convince directors or clients to actually, producers to go with single camera. How do you defend single? What's your argument? Because I know that to me it's always, I have to defend it because I have to give enough reasons to actually go with a single camera. I want to hear like how is your...
It's a tough one. You have to argue economics, time. You have to have a director who's 100% behind it. To convince the director, I go like, I'll try to convince them. But if they say, well, yeah, but I always want to get that, extra shot there, or I don't have time to do it, or the actors are like, some actors don't like 2 camera because they want to know where the camera is that's getting the best angle of them, best shot. So if the actors are on board with you, you kind of want to sidle up to them and go, like, we should shoot this single camera. Don't you think that way we always get the best? But then there's the other ones who go, well, but we're doing dialogue scenes, and I don't want to have to repeat for 2 different angles the same dialogue just with the other actor because he was off camera or she was off camera. I want to be able to know that you can intercut, and directors will say the same thing, intercut the scene with the exact same action. So it's one of those endless. It's like the battle between men and women in relationships. There's always
what do you
convincing.
Think actors prefer more?
I think actors prefer there's 2 different kinds of actors. There's actors who prefer what preserves the performance the best, and there's actors that prefer what gets me out of here the quickest. And there's quite a few of those that they want to be there, but they don't want to, I don't want to do 10 takes of that same thing. I want to, let's get the close-up and the medium shot at the same time. Put the cameras side by side, or do 90 degrees. The biggest fight is you always, as a cinematographer, is you want to convince the producer or the director you don't want to shoot 2 different angles where the lighting is compromised from one. You got to don't compromise it. They both have to look good. So you have to make choices. So side by side is okay usually, and then where do you get the closer to the eye line? Is that the wider camera or the tighter camera? There's all those.
Actually, my follow-up question was about your approach when you actually have to do multicam setup, how you do this. And there was another question in terms of which one you choose closer to the eye line, the close-up or the wide?
For me, it's usually the close-up.
Close-up.
Yeah. Close-up, closer to the eye line. You try to keep them fairly close together so it's not a big, or you really come off axis. And at that point, that point, it could be also the wider or the medium shot can be on the eye line of the other actor, and your close-up can be more of a profile, which can work beautifully. It all depends on the director, because I did a movie with the director's good friend, and we're doing a lot of interviews in the movie. And the interviews we were doing on sticks with the zoom lens, and and I said, well, the second camera, he wanted to have a second camera on some of these. I go, okay, let's do that. And I said, well, how about if we do some profile and do he didn't like the look of an interview cutting to a profile shot in an interview, which they do it now. I mean, all the time on 60 Minutes. Every show does it. Yeah. I'm not saying I was ahead of my time, but the director just didn't approve of it. So, there's influences you can.
Yeah, I think it's stylistic choice. I remember when they started doing this, and I actually liked it. Yeah. Because I think when you go more off axis, you go more interested in the looks, so they use it right now all the time.
Yeah. And operating. Just to mention that, I love operating, because for me, it's also framing is as important as lighting. And if you're operating, you have the full control of, and just the minute little things. I can't tell you how many.
I know what you're talking about.
How many times I've been on the comms talking to the operator and go, just this pan a little lever, tilt up just a tiny, no, not that. Because I really care about composition. It's so important.
It's for me the same thing. It's micromanagement. Yeah. Because if it's more than one camera, I usually go on the monitor.
Yeah, me too.
Because I have to make sure that all the cameras,
they're both doing the right thing.
Yeah, doing the right thing. So they cut together well. Yeah. And same headroom or whatever, if it's two at the same time. But it's always, I feel like, a little bit there, which I think may sound irritated, but I don't know. Sometimes it just feels
important.
Right,
it can make or break the shot, the emotion of the shot, the feeling of it. Composition is important. Again, to me, it's as important as the lighting.
It's one of the things that I think is hard to teach, because it's something. It's either you have it or not. You just like a feeling, Because I see that a lot of talented and knowledgeable filmmakers, but sometimes they're operators, and sometimes it doesn't feel like to move it. Even like talking, the cases, you probably have thousands of them. When something goes off script, and someone goes away or something, what do you do with the camera? Because you didn't know he's going to move out. Yeah. How are you going to follow him? You're going to pan out. You're going to pan this one. You're going to move to the other actor. How are you going to react to this instant?
Use your gut.
So that's the thing with, I think, the good operator versus bad operator. Yeah. What he's going to do in unexpected situations.
Well, that's where being a documentarian comes in handy. Yeah. I mean, I did years of documentaries before I did any kind of feature thing. And I worked with Chris Guest on 3 movies and a bunch of TV things, and those are mockumentaries. But the lesson that he taught me was don't anticipate, because we would do more than one take. It wasn't all single take, but it was totally improv. So there was no script. Yeah. I mean, there's a storyline, but there was no scripted dialogue or anything. So we do a take, and then we go, okay, he'd say, let's do one more. I just want a little bit this, a little tighter or something. And I would know when the other actor was going to say something off camera or whatever. And I would start to move before he would go, no. God, no. Never move the camera. And this is to give the documentary feel. Yeah. You never move. You don't anticipate, because you don't know what they're going to do. Yeah. So once they start talking, then you can go to them. And on a feature story, maybe you're thinking, well, that's wrong. You want to see their full dialogue and everything. But so it became a gut instinct thing of when something happens, goes off script, you use what you know from experience, or your gut tells you is what's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you go there and oh fuck, I'm off set. Mm-hmm. The set stopped there. I forgot about that. Yeah. But I would just say also, I had an operator on a movie, and he was new as an operator. Mm-hmm. He had been an assistant. He was bumped up to operate. And so I'm letting him operate, and I'm watching on the monitor. And I go, no, you got it wrong. He was, he was hunting like that. And I go, no, put the guy, really put him to the edge of the frame and let's do another take. Roll, next take. He does that again. And I go, wait, cut. This is no good. We can't use this. Why you do? He says, I'm just trying to give you a good frame.
So you can frame.
And I go,
crop it and post.
I could teach him from here to eternity, and to him that was a good frame. It's just it wasn't in his instinct.
Yeah, it's also like this thing about headrooms, because like there is no exact rule in terms of how much headroom is there. It's just the feeling. Sometimes it just feels right to give more headroom. Sometimes you don't want to give this for free. Also the aspect ratios, how you actually do this in different aspect ratios, like so many different things that it's hard to teach this kind of stuff. You just feel it,
Yeah. And I think one thing that helps to teach is film history. Just show students and show people thousands of films from all over the world, because different cultures also use different framing and everything. Like Ozu, all of his films, it was always a 50 millimeter lens, and the lens was always at the height of a Japanese man kneeling.
Okay. Interesting.
It's things that can be culturally specific, and just what fits the type of story. So you want to watch German films from the New Wave, you want to watch films from the 20s, and you want to watch silent films, you want to watch Westerns, and get the feeling of what feels right for that kind of story that you're telling. So you have at least some cultural information and historic information that the audience can then relate to and go, oh, that makes sense. And then you talk, headroom. It's a there's the old Warner Brothers haircut there, but it depends on the size of the frame.
On the size of the frame, exactly.
And then you see a film like Ida, which story-wise is brilliant, because he puts her at the bottom of the frame and has basically heaven above, and it's just, if you just look at it, it was 4:3 aspect ratio, black and white, and you look at it and go, that's kind of weird framing, but you understand it. It brings an emotion.
Yeah.
It has a story sense.
It tells a story.
Yeah.
Exactly. Another question is like, I told you already before off camera that I want to challenge myself sometimes. Do like stuff, go to the roots, no assistant, no light, just camera and me, and just go and just try to make something beautiful out of nothing. Do you ever practice like something like this, or maybe you accept projects that are way lower than you used to be, just to see if you like, to challenge yourself, to see maybe you actually make more with less lights or something like this, so figure this out.
I try to do all sorts of different things that I've never done before, because it's learning, growing, having new experiences in filmmaking and cinematography. So I accept some very low budget and no paying jobs, just to, because I like the script, or I like the people, which is very important too, the people that you're working with as. But I just did one this weekend.
Oh wow!
It was an experimental thing. It was a different kind of thing.
No, it
was with the USC, the ETC, which is their, I think it's an experimental, I forget the exact term, experimental technology center or something, using 2 iPhones and this app called Jet Set, and shooting on green screen, and just learning experimenting with how this can work, putting together the images that come from an illustrator with a live action, and not lighting it perfectly, lighting it just enough, and with the ratios being no more than a 3:1, so there's always detail in the shadows, and a shot on iPhone 16, using the Blackmagic design interface, which is kind of you don't really have control over it. Just it's lighter and darker, more gain or less gain, basically. But that said, using that material, and then we're going to go in afterwards when it's all cut into this new program that I've never heard of before called Beeble. It's an AI relighting program, and we're going to go in and actually light it the way we want it to look to match the backgrounds. Because on set, I'm looking with illustrations that are not the final backgrounds and just the basic idea of them, and where I can change things. But I'm going to learn and be there for the whole post, learn how to do relighting in the computer, real relighting, even way more than just, what you can do with Windows and, changing contrast and that kind of stuff. So I did that for free because it was learning also. But I did a very low budget movie last year that was fun, and it was good people, and it was, I got paid, but very little comparatively. So yeah, I mean, it really depends on the project. And if I have got nothing going on, I will take my phone, which I've been told by some very professional still photographers that that's their best still camera right now is the iPhone 15 or 16. And it's true, there's some great stuff you can do with it. So I just do little bits, either video or stills, just experimenting, just trying to keep the eye and the brain and the exercise going.
Yeah.
And look for new projects.
Do you watch YouTube videos, like some, I don't know,
not very often.
Technique or
I watch
equipment?
Yeah, I watch occasionally. I don't follow looking for them, but sometimes people, send me links to things, and I do see some good things there.
Because we met at NAB. I feel like you up to the trends,
I try to be. Yeah. I mean, they go fast. There's fast and furious. There's new things out, seems like every week. The thing that I'm following now a lot is all the new advances in AI, what you can do in AI, to know how to embrace it, how to use it, how to incorporate it, as opposed to fight it or let it take over our job. Now, there are people who are doing some amazing things with AI, with some of the newest programs that are so brilliant, you couldn't tell them. Really, to me, I say you can't tell it from something photographed. There's a couple of people that I've actually befriended. This guy just does amazing AI work. And I just saw another thing the other day that's scary good. And the USC ETC thing, they have another project coming up that's full AI. And I said, I'd like to be involved. I don't know what I can do with it, but I want to be involved because there's no camera involved. But I want to see if there's a way that I could consult with the image making, the framing, or something.
Kind of like animation. Animation is there is no camera, but they still need DP to actually
or at least somebody who knows
navigate you through. AI is crazy. It's changing so fast, and every time, every week there is something new coming up, and I was like, wow! I just a couple of days ago I found new AI software website. Called, I think, TLX Studio, something like this. So you import script.
Yes. And then it gives you a shot list.
It breaks down everything.
Yeah.
It gives you a shot list that you can tweak to your liking,
Yes.
You can adjust camera movements. You can adjust style the way it renders image. If you want a black and white just storyboard, or you want a realistic render and stuff like that. It gives you it makes you a pitch deck. It makes you all this break down all the characters, and you can choose how the characters will look, so it's consistent. So because before there was an issue, how to get a consistent character. So you do consistent characters, and then you can also animate this whole thing, so it moves. And even though you can add the soundtrack and sound design to it, and I look at this and wow. I basically just imported a short film script just to see how it's going to do. And it did fairly decent job, There are some tweaks.
It's a time saver.
It is,
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the only person that it removes from the workforce really is your illustrator.
Yeah.
And some people, they do it themselves anyhow. They stick figures or whatever for a storyboard type of thing.
I did stick figures.
But that kind of thing, if it's used, it can be great. It can be a real time saver, a real big help. And there's other programs that, purport to be replacing the final product. And they're getting there, though. I mean, they can. I can see advertising going that way. TV commercials being fully AI within 5 years, except for if they need a celebrity in there. And if the celebrity doesn't agree to be scanned and put in, then they want to be live. But there was a thing came to me a couple of days ago. A friend said that at one of the networks, they want to know, how can we do these shows where it's sort of a reality show where the lead guy, who's a celebrity, doesn't want to have to go to all these locations and everything to deal with all this stuff. Just wants to spend a half a day in the studio. And they said, well, we've got these things where you can, with Gaussian splats, you can import full 3D environments and put it up, and they can see it on a monitor and they can do it right there in a stage and, get through it. So there's ways to make it work for you, I think, without taking too much away. But it's a wild west. There's a lot of people in the filmmaking community that are upset because they're losing jobs because of this, and it's true. But again, you kind of have to. Are we going to be able to stop it? I don't think so.
I don't think you can stop it. I think you just have to let it go.
Yeah.
And just let them overuse it so they get tired of it, and they will come back to it. Because I feel like as much as I like AI, and I think it's actually improving and makes my life so much easier in terms of many things, I don't think it's going to replace my job specifically, because quite honestly, we all know that filming is like 20% of what work we do.
Right. Yeah.
Because there's so much going on behind that. It's like planning, politics, all this stuff, communicating, navigating, all this stuff. It's a little good luck replacing us. With AI.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think some people will definitely lose.
I mean, production designers can use AI really to help them create the designs and stuff and finalize them in much quicker and much more efficiently. But I think one thing that they still need, and again, commercials is one thing, but on a movie set, how many times, and it happened to me all the time, you get on set and there's a script and the actors, and you run through it and the actors, that's not working for me. Let me try this. Let me try that. How are you going to do that in AI? That's not AI.
Yeah.
AI is you give a command. If the director doesn't like it and they say they want something, but to get the input of the actors who really good actors brings, maybe it's ridiculous to even have to say it, but brings so much to the final product. Yeah. They are the heart and soul. The story can be what it is, great writing, hopefully, but the individual actors can bring so much to the story that this actor would never been able to do what that actor did, or that choice was the right choice. So I don't think AI will ever. Will ever. Well, I can't say that. It's going to be a while, but
I have a theory on this because some say that the actors will be replaced and all that. I don't think they will be, and I'll give you an example. There are right now on this Instagram. There are so many Instagram pages. Like girls made with AI, and they look perfect.
Yeah.
Like, so beautiful, great bodies and all that. But do we attracted to them? I'm not attracted to them. And I don't think everyone will be attracted to something that is not real. Same with actors. I don't think they're actually going to feel for actors if they actually 100% generated.
Yeah. Until it gets to the point where you can't tell. There's a movie now I just saw the other night called Companion.
I saw that.
Did you see it?
Yeah.
It's cleverly done. It's a horror film, but it's cleverly done, and you kind of guessed ahead that what the deal was, part of it at least. But it's interesting because it's AI in the flesh. How do you determine that? Then how do you separate there? On a movie screen, it's something different. I don't know. I think
Westworld is a good example because they actually, I think the Westworld showcased is the best in terms of like that a computer can actually be human, more human than human.
Yeah.
That was, I think, is a great topic, and the way they showed it is, I think, excellent.
Yeah.
And actually, you
I did season 3. Yeah.
Yeah. How does that work? And did you I saw was it like a second unit? Or
I was originally brought in to shoot inserts. We were going to do 2 weeks of inserts for all these scenes that the editor knew that he needed all these pickups stuff. We had the original footage, we had the set pieces, and we had to light it, everything to match exactly the rest of the scene. So it was myself and Bruce McCleary came in, and we had like 3 sets rotating all day long for 2 weeks in a row. And finally, at one point, I think one of the producers, or Jonah, came up to and said, you're going to do this scene now. We need you here to fill in here. So, okay, so it's a bigger thing than just an insert. Pickups of this, and that led to shooting the opening of the first episode. Shot the whole first scene, and that's just a scene, but the whole first segment, except for a couple of shots that Paul Cameron had shot in the Philippines. I think that's where they shot, or Singapore. But everything else I did here in LA and down in Laguna Niguel, I think, and kept on other scenes, kept on from other episodes. They kept bringing me in to work with the director for pickups and full scenes. And then the final scene, the big fight at the end, they had me shoot that. And Bruce, I think, did action stuff for that. And so we got integrated into full on,
nice.
Working with the first unit director and doing first unit stuff, and it was exciting. It was chaotic like crazy, but it was great. And we were shooting on film, which was also for me. It was the first time I'd shot on film again since the Bond movie, and it was again, no, not since Bond, but since maybe Machine Gun Preacher. And it was like, okay, yeah, it'll work. I did some tests and it'll work. And I know they won't let me push it more than one stop, but
overall
52-19, one stop over. Because we were shooting a lot of night stuff and it was 52-19. And, you get used to shooting digital at 25 or 3200, but, no question. And suddenly you have 1,000 as your max. So
interesting. Yeah. A friend of mine who was a sound guy, who I worked on a couple of projects, films, he actually was a sound guy also on the Westworld. So he told me also, like Christopher Nolan, his brother, he also likes to actually do it on film. And he likes real dialogues, not ADR.
Yeah.
So the sound has to be perfect. And when he told me that he worked on Westworld, to me it was like a big benchmark, because I know how demanding sound is there.
Yeah.
So how's tell me briefly, what's the difference between doing films and actually series?
Generally
approach.
Generally shorter time period. Series can be really long. Depends on the movie. I mean, like the Bond movie was a full year and a half. I guess it's just on series. Well, with Chris Guest, I did a series where I shot every episode. On most series these days, you don't shoot every episode. You shoot, like on Peripheral, I shot 4 of the 8.
By the way, I love Peripheral. I love it. I love the look of it, and I actually like the story.
And those we shot with the Orions.
Oh, actually, yes.
Yeah. The Orions with the Alexa, I think Alexa Mini.
That's why you didn't like them?
Not that I didn't like them. I wasn't excited by them.
Yeah.
I felt that they kind of were ordinary. I guess I was just used to the more exotic anamorphics that had more character, more.
What do you like? What's your favorite?
Well, I like the Hawks. I really like
the 2 times,
Yeah. I just looked at I did some tests for a movie, the Maru. Have you seen them? The Marus and the Apollos. The Apollos.
Oh, yeah.
Apollos are gorgeous.
Yeah.
I know I wanted to use them on this thing, but there was a problem.
Ukrainian.
Yeah, they're Ukrainian. And there was a problem with the one, there were only 2 of the focal lengths were available, because the third one, they couldn't get out of the Ukraine. It was, there was with all the war and everything, there was a slowdown. Now I think they've got them up and they're out, but they were beautiful. Those are beautiful lenses. Really great character.
Yeah.
Really nice. And good size too.
Yeah. At first I thought they're going to look like Orions, but they
have their own. Yeah. Those and the Marus were really nice. MERU. And if you can get Panavision C lenses, C series, probably eventually, maybe someday, I want to try out the Todd AO. I did.
That's a crazy.
I've used 2 of the Todd AO lenses, not the whole series. I used the 55 millimeter, which was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Fabulous lens. I used that together with on Rattlesnake, which I did the rest of the film with I think I used the Kawas. And then I used the Todd AO 55, because it had you could focus 10 inches away from the focal plane. It was
great coverage.
Yeah.
It's fast.
Yeah.
It's because there is a TV show called You on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it. And the first season, first episode, like the opening, they do sequence with this lenses. I was like, what is it? It's out of this.
YOU?
Yeah.
I'll have to look for it.
It's crazy look. It's the shallowest film I've ever seen. Probably the world is out of nothing. You make it so interesting.
The biggest problem with the Todd AOs though is they're old and the mechanics, and they're just
because those are K35s. Adapted with anamorphic element in front.
Yeah.
So
and a lot of the K35s have been rehoused and redone. The Todd AOs, the original Todd AOs, they're they're antiques. I mean, they're beautiful, but they're so delicate.
Yeah, I see them rehoused.
Yeah,
they crazy expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really expensive.
I want to talk about a little bit of Quantum of Solace.
Okay.
So I suppose it was the biggest budget you probably had to work with.
Yeah. The biggest before that was probably 1/5 the size.
How was that when you actually had to deal with that budget film, and how was it different? And were you overwhelmed or?
No, honestly, it wasn't any different. The only thing was they said no a lot less when you asked for something that you felt you should have to shoot a scene or to do something. But you had to prove that they had to agree that it was not just to spend the money, that it made sense. It was something that would be on the screen and that would be useful for the story. Bigger and more people and more locations and more traveling and more this and more that. But it's the same as any other movie that, you're just telling the story and using the tools. And
so was it like now you can get more lights or more cranes? And stuff like that?
You get what you need.
Yeah.
And there were some scenes where, yes, I needed to have a 120-foot crane with an ARRI Max mover on it with, lights and somewhere, but we needed it for the scene. Other times, you arrange that your scenes don't need to have that kind of thing. But no, it wasn't like suddenly it's a big, your playground is really big and you can throw in anything you want and do anything you want. And again, I had the restriction. I want to do that stuff with the red camera and they wouldn't let me because Sony wouldn't. And so I didn't get to do that. And I tried to shoot it in 65 millimeter. And I had Barbara and Michael here in LA. They showed at Warner Brothers, I think, we showed them a sample reel of something on 65 that's supposed to show how 65 is better than 35 with detail and stuff. And they looked at it and they said, the difference isn't that great, and it's going to cost us $2.5 million more to do it, and it's not worth it. So we didn't do it. So it was.
I just watched it again a few days ago, and I loved it. I think it's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
The choice of camera movements, the choice of lenses, the choice of angles, everything.
It was very well considered.
Yeah.
And that's how I try to approach everything, whether I'm doing a $10 million, $2 million, $1 million, or $250 million. It's about telling the story the proper way, what works. And sometimes you can get a tool that you couldn't get on a lower budget film because it's not, you can't afford it. You find other ways to make it work.
Yeah. I see there is a pattern in James Bond, but in other movies as well. It's catchlight. Yeah, are there any particular way you like to get the catchlight? Because I remember particularly the cave scene in James Bond, where there is not much light, but everyone has a strong catchlight in the eyes. Everyone has different techniques. Like someone put it on the camera, someone put it off.
Depends on the camera setup, but yeah, I like to have an eye light on the camera when I can. And sometimes,
so what do you use, small?
It's changed over the years because things have become way more available now that are tiny. Actually, the thing I used on the last movie was something that NAB a year ago, one of the stands gave me as a gift. It was a little battery-powered LED fixture that had adjustable volume or output and color temperature, full range. And also effects. It could do flashes or this or that. And it was very lightweight. I think it used one AA battery or something. It's about this big, and it's got sort of a domed front. And I built a little eyebrow for it. And I just stick it on the matte box and set it to whatever whatever number I need to look at it.
What's the ratio with a key light you usually do? So it doesn't cost any shadows? Just by eye?
Yeah, that I do by eye because there's almost no reading from it. You just look and you see one less, one go down, and that's it. That's what you need, just so you get the kick.
I don't remember who said this, but I remember I've heard it somewhere that no matter how dark scene can be, if it's a pure darkness, as long as you have catch lights, it plays different.
Yeah, there was something funny. It was an article, not an article, but a thing yesterday, a blog. I don't know if you know Richard Crudo's blog, Normal Exposure. He was complaining about a TV series, or a lot of TV series. They're so dark, you can't see anything, and my TV's calibrated, and I still can't see anything. And then somebody made a comment, yeah, there's a lot like that. But as long as there's a light in the eye, because they say the eyes are the mirror to the soul, and on the actors, if you can't see their eyes, you don't understand, unless, that's part of the stories. You don't see what they're thinking. So if you just give that little bit of light, that can, just it can make it work.
It makes things alive. Yeah. So that's all about it. I remember, what was that? It was some kind of animation film, and they were already at the point where they could really animate well anything you want. But there was something wrong with the characters. Because
was it Polar Express?
I don't remember,
that movie?
But
their eyes were dead.
Yeah, so something that it didn't connect with the audience. Yeah. And they would do so many different things, make faces more real or something like this. And then at some point they started tweaking the eye, and they made them more like glossy. Yeah. So there is more like catchlight, and it changed everything. Then there is a connection to the characters on the screen. Yeah, I was like, they were like
this light's working for you.
Yeah,
probably for me too.
This light actually was set because I didn't know you're gonna wear a hat or not. So it's just
usually I do wear the hat, but I took it off because I said, well, he's bald, I can be bald too.
Is there a technique that you keep using on every project? I don't know, maybe lighting or camera movement or lenses that you like, no matter what project you go, it's always
it always depends on each project is different,
and then
it just has its own needs and its own solutions.
And there is an opposite question. Is there something that you avoid at all times? It can be like, I don't know, let's say no frontal light and no particular colors, maybe some elements of production design that you don't like, maybe lamps without shears, or maybe, I don't know, south-facing buildings.
South-facing buildings, costumes that are pure white, especially in, high-key scenes, white cars in exteriors, things that just make it tough to control the lighting properly, or the image that you get into, like clipping and that kind of stuff.
Something that like you walk on the scout and maybe say, you say no right away, or maybe like if you like have conversations with the wardrobe and costume designer, say like let's do this color, let's avoid this color.
Yes, or all in completely flat black costumes in night scenes where there's no relief and they just get lost. Depends on the environment, the scene, all that kind of stuff. But there's some things. But south-facing buildings, and especially white-painted south-facing buildings, are the worst. And that always comes up like even before a tech scout. You want to know on locations, pictures, and go, where is that facing? What is that? That's not going to work. Or can we paint it?
Do you have maybe a preference in terms of you like on the wider side lenses or longer lenses? So maybe it depends on the project.
Depends on the project and the scene.
No preference.
It's not a preference. I do tend to like close-ups with wider lenses because I feel, again, it depends on what the scene is and where the story's at, but it feels you're more emotionally involved with the character. Yeah, you're with them as opposed to distant. Generally, longer lens close-up is more observant. Like a objective, as opposed to this is you're with the character.
Do you like more dirty with the shoulder or clean when you do dialogues?
Tend to like clean better. But it can be. It also depends on the environment that they're in. It's all. It goes by feeling, I guess.
If, for instance, you end up shooting in a building with white walls, what's your strategy? How to make it look? Because in the Quantum of Solace, there is a scene where in the building where it's all white walls, and I was like, okay, but it doesn't look flat.
Is that in the hotel? In either the hotel lobby or the hotel room?
But it was all white walls and everything.
And there was no way around that. That was the existing building was all white.
And I was wondering, but it doesn't look boring. It doesn't look flat. Are there any techniques you do?
Well, you balance. So if the walls are white and you want to bring up something middle, you bring up your lights in the middle and not on the walls. So the rest of the scene is brighter in comparison. So the walls don't feel as white.
Maybe hard light as well helps.
Or hard light,
so
or just more relief from it. When you're in a building and you have to light it, you try as best as you can to keep the light off the walls, not to add any light to them. And if it was indoor, sometimes on outdoor walls, you have to, if you can't paint them, you can hose them down with water, and they will be darker at least for a while. It depends on what the material is, but if it's like something that's semi-absorbent,
I also heard that you can use polarizers to actually cut.
And I use a polarizer. That is one thing. I use a polarizer on the lens always. Indoor, outdoor, whenever. I'm always using a polarizer because it helps cut. Just so you don't have to call a makeup person that's, got this little bit of shine. Just attenuate, just attenuate that little bit of kick off. You're not like a full-on polarization, but just enough to make it work better. Can work on walls. And sometimes I use a one-stop, but the one-stop generally I find tends to be not effective enough. But I like the Schneider TruePol, the full two-stop. That never comes off the camera. I mean, even on day interiors, night interiors, whenever, if I have the amount of light, because it just
two-stops. You mean like the reduction of the light? Yeah. Okay.
When it's full on, when it's full on, it takes out two stops. When it's less, it'll be it doesn't take out full two stops. But the polarizer, that is the one consistent.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's the one consistent.
Overall, like when producers and such big studios and stuff, how, like, if you want, like, any tricks in terms of to be diplomatic but at the same time to demand for something, like, if you like,
it's tough because you're like, you're the head of your department and the grip department and the electric department. You're and managing everything and getting what you need for the show, and that everybody's treated fairly and properly, and doing it diplomatically. I've been accused a couple of times, more than once, of not being diplomatic enough and getting myself in trouble or whatever because of demands that I felt were, correct or needed. It's tough. It's tough. Sometimes just holding yourself back and knowing when to talk and when not to talk. What's worth fighting for.
Yeah. I hate the situation when something has been decided for me, like what camera we're gonna use or how we're gonna move the camera and stuff like that, and it's like, oh, we want to use this crane for this kind of shot, and I was like, well, wait a minute, why do you want that? You're gonna waste so much time doing that, and it can be approached actually in a different manner, and actually the money you want to spend on the crane, you told me no to many other things that's way more affordable than the crane, but you say yes to the crane, which we don't really need because.
Right. And why is that decision made?
Yeah.
I've had that happen, the exact same kind of thing, and wondering, is it because the person who's making that decision is getting money back from the people who are renting the crane? Is it a business deal for them? Is there something going on? Because there's times where it doesn't make sense, and you question it and you go, okay, how am I going to deal with it then in the end? Yeah. And sometimes it's like, okay, that's going to be, the tool's going to be there. I'll figure out a way to use it. Yeah. Or it'll just sit there and they'll go, why'd we have that? And you say, well, I didn't order it. Somebody else ordered it. Talk to them.
You don't do storyboards, do you?
No. I'm not a big fan of storyboards. The last movie I did, the director did all his own storyboards for a year before we even got started on the shoot, before I even came into it. And it was good. It gave him, he wrote the story, he acted in it. It was a good thing for him to do the movie beforehand in his own mind. But we looked at the storyboards and then we went and did what we were going to do anyhow. What I saw on set made sense.
Yeah, I think in this case, it's the storyboard is just an understanding how it's going to flow.
Yeah.
You have to actually be
It's a suggestion.
Yeah.
I mean, when storyboards are taken for verbatim, it has to be exactly like that. On an occasion for action sequences, I can see that. If it's something that has to match something and really difficult, complex action and rigs and things, yes. But in general, I see storyboards are a suggestion. Sometimes actors think the script is a suggestion. So it's kind of the same thing.
What do you think most common mistakes new upcoming cinematographers do?
The most common mistake? Not listen to their gut instinct.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. I think so. When you overthink things.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah. I think we all are. It's just something where, in general, I really think when you look back on things, that gut instinct was the right thing to do. And I don't know why. It's something like it's primeval or whatever. Why the gut instinct? And I think it's not just in making decisions about movie making. It's about it kind of like everything in life.
Do you accept suggestions on set?
Absolutely. And if it's a better idea, if it's a good idea, I will go with it. But I'm always saying I'm going to let the director know it was your idea, So
how to manage the ideas? Because like the moment you start letting everyone know that you accept all ideas, it starts becoming too many of them. How do you like?
no, I don't know. It's I usually tell, especially the gaffer, when I'm interviewing them for the job, I say, look, I'm a collaborative cinematographer. I don't want to have to tell you where to put every light, what to put there, how to flag. I want to tell you what the look of the scene is, what the feeling has got to be, hard light or soft light or this or that, and I want what my base exposure to be and the ratios. But if you have a better idea for even a look, we come up with something and you go, it would be really nice if we did that instead, or we did that. And I think, don't be afraid to tell me. And if I say no 3 or 4 times, keep coming up with ideas, because it may be the 5th or the 6th one that really is perfect. Yeah. I'm open to it, and I'm open to Grip's ideas for different ways to move the camera. I'll say, I think we should have the jib arm should be like this. And he goes, well, it'll work much better if we can do this. I go, cool. Okay. Yeah. If that'll work better, I'm happy. Camera assistance, sometimes about focus, where to pull it, when to pull the focus on who. And sometimes the director will say it and I'll say, I think you should pull when it goes, and you watch the scene and the focus pull just instinctively goes at a different time. You go, you were right. That worked better.
I think it's art of itself.
Yeah.
To pull focus.
Absolutely.
You may think about like, what is pulling focus? But to pull in the right moment, to rack focus, sometimes you not planning to rack focus, but it just feels right. And, that's another feeling.
And it's not even just getting the numbers right, getting it in focus. It's the timing and the speed of the focus change, all that. No, focus pulling is really important. Yeah. Really important.
It's like, who said this? I think Deakins said that. The best focus puller, the one that we don't see. Yeah. They're like, if you don't see the work of focus puller, it's the best work. Yeah. Let's play the game. I think I played this with Shelley, and Shelley really loved it. And he told me, like, you should do this every time, because
if Shelley says so, then
he wants to know the answers. So I was like, it's a game, fun game, this or that. I'm just gonna ask a question, and you're gonna say us, you prefer that or that?
Okay.
Film or digital?
Digital.
Daylight or night?
Both, just not sunset or sunrise.
Why? Sunset?
There's never enough time to do it properly.
Okay. Static or dynamic shots?
There is no answer to that. It depends on what the story is, what the scene is, what the emotion has got to be. I can't say I prefer that to that, because it's so story dependent.
On stage or on location?
I think on location.
Scripted or improvised?
I've just had such good experience with improvised, like the best, that it's hard to say that I prefer scripted to it. But I think improvised is a bigger challenge. So maybe improvised.
Storyboard or figure out on the day?
Figure it out on the day.
Well,
no, that's not true. I don't storyboard, but I shot plan. I do overhead drawings of where the camera should be, and I go through the whole script from the beginning to the end and decide all the shots way beforehand, before I even get to the set. But then knowing that I can change depending on something I see on the moment, something I see when we get to that location that's different than I had remembered, or different than I thought it was going to be, or just different, or that the actors give us something different. So it's, being ready to change.
Got it. Wide angles or close-ups?
They can be both. Wide angle close-up.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, Shelley said the same thing.
Yeah.
Natural light or artificial?
Natural looking artificial light. And the reason being just control over the amount of time that that it's doable.
Color or black and white?
Oh, God. I love them both. Just they're different animals.
Epic scenes or intimate moments?
At this point, I think epic scenes. I've done a lot of intimate moments, and you tend to do a lot of intimate moments on the smaller films because you can't afford the epic scenes.
Yeah. Long takes or quick cuts?
Long takes.
Tungsten, HMI, or LED?
Tungsten.
Experimental or classic techniques?
That really depends on the scenes, the story. I embrace both.
Fix it on set or fix it on post?
Fix it on set. On set. Whatever you can do in camera.
Yeah.
Right there. And one of the reasons for that is because if you say, well, let's fix it in post, or we'll fix it in the DI, I'll clean it up later. But so much of the time, you're not there.
Yeah.
And all these things you say, oh, the shadow on the wall, or the light, we're going to take that down with a grad in post, and do that in the DI. And then you're not at the DI and nobody thought about it and does it. It's written down and they don't follow, and then it doesn't get done. So if you can fix it in camera, on set, do that.
Small crew or big crew?
I'm kind of more of a small crew, generally. Again, it depends on the scenes you're doing or the scope, but generally a small crew is easier to manage and to control, and to control, not in a bad way to control, but just to, have them
to
listen.
To live through the project. Light meter or spectrometer?
Light meter.
The fixing on set, actually, it's funny. You mentioned that there was a scene in the film I shot, and I had to come up with a creative solution because we had location, and location looked really boring except one wall.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like a kind of like an interview or like psychiatric session. They seen each other. So I wanted to use the same background for both.
Mm-hmm.
I just changed the lighting so it looks different.
Yeah.
But we had to shoot the exact same direction. And I gave instruction that on post, you just have to flip the image so it looks like they're looking at each other.
Right.
You can't imagine how many notes I gave. They didn't.
They did. So they're both looking right to left.
Yes. So I had to actually go, and then I showed them how it should look.
Yeah.
Because it looks wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I explained and I showed them, took a picture, screenshot, actually flip it to show them. Oh, I get what you said,
Yeah.
And it's like one of the things you feel like it's so obvious, but even then they didn't do it,
Well, sometimes when you get into the flipping, it can be an issue because of costume or hair.
No, I thought about this, yeah. But there was nothing. It was very everything symmetrical. It just we played we did a slash of light on the wall.
Yeah.
And we did it from the other side, a little bit different, Also some background elements we changed it.
Mm-hmm.
And it works well. It just you have to flip the image so it works. Yeah.
Yeah. But sometimes you have to be there to remind them or to tell them to do it.
Yeah. It was kind of an excellent experience in terms of the way we find a way to make it work, because if you should have seen the location, it looked so bad, but we made it look so good. It's made it say it's one of the prettiest scenes in the film. I was like, you should have seen the whole thing. A lesson that you learned for the years of working that you'd pass along to aspiring DPs?
Don't be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Take chances.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid to do
new stuff.
To try new stuff. To try something. To do something. Take chances, and don't always be conservative about what you're shooting, and just really push yourself.
What differentiates a good DP from a great one?
Luck. Luck and timing. Not color timing, but timing. Being in the right place at the right time. I mean, talent obviously has something to do with it, but I think there are probably some great DPs that you've never heard of and you've never seen because the timing and their luck didn't happen, and they didn't get the chances, the opportunities to do what they could do. And also, one last thing, between a great DP and a good DP and a great DP can be their publicist or their agent, their manager, whatever. Getting the exposure,
Interesting.
Another word for exposure.
Yeah.